We will be in the second chapter tonight. And thus far, Daniel and his three friends, along with others, have been taken into captivity in Babylon and educated for 3 years in the wisdom and ways of the Babylonians. And tonight we are in the second chapter, and things are going to be picking up. Now, this is a second, in this chapter, a second kind of self-contained story. And we want to be reminded tonight as we get into things as to what the purpose of this book is. All right, so we'll get into talking about that a little bit more. But meanwhile, Ray, would you like to lead us in prayer? Thank you.
Thank you so much for gathering here tonight to study the Word. Be a fantastic study of Daniel, and thank you, Daryl, to prepare this for us and lead us through it. And pray for those that are not here tonight, God, and be with them and guide them. Just thank you so much for the blessings you give us always, and most of all for your Son, Jesus. In his name I pray. Amen.
All right, thank you. Okay. In chapter 1, verse 17, just setting things up a bit, for as for these 4 youths, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. At the end of the time, when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king spoke with them, and among all of them none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they stood before the king. And in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters that were in all his kingdom. And Daniel was there until the first year of King Cyrus. And so from here, we're going to be going into chapter 2 and continuing things. I got to get the remote for the PowerPoint here. Thank you, sir. Okay. So our focus for right now is going to be on the first 30 verses of chapter 2, and so our questions in here just a moment are going to reflect that. So this is just an outline of Daniel 2, the king and his advisors, in chapter 2, verses 1 through 13, where he's going to kind of put them to the test, and that'll be an interesting one. God reveals the mystery to Daniel, 14 through 23, the dream and its interpretation, 24 through 45, and then the king's response we'll see in 46 through 49. Okay, so as we get ready to go into this second chapter, here are some questions that we might want to consider to cover as we go. Did Nebuchadnezzar have one dream in this chapter or more? Okay, you'll see why I asked that question in a moment. Who are the Chaldeans in this context? Okay, who are the Chaldeans? What language is Daniel written in from 2:4b to the end of chapter 7? Okay, because the language there is going to change. The NASB heading says Nebuchadnezzar's forgotten dream. Why does that make no sense? Okay, okay. I thought that was quite interesting that Daniel made the appointment with the king before the dream and its interpretation was revealed to him. So what did that show about him? What is meant by times and epochs? What is meant by the latter days? And from Genesis 49:1 on, the phrase the latter days or days to come regularly, from 49:1 on, the phrase the latter days or days to come regularly refers to what? Okay, so those are some things that we can consider here this evening. So as we go into this second chapter now, we've got our setup. These young men, along with Daniel, are trained. Daniel, we are told, had understanding in all visions and dreams. And so now this is going to come into play in this second chapter. Okay, now, we're going to be in this chapter looking at some prophecy about the future. Okay? And I would suggest that the main point in all of this is not the content of the revelation of the future, but the fact that it is Daniel's God that knows that future. Okay? Because I believe that, as we mentioned last week, that they're people in exile and suffering some measure of oppression need to know the message of this book. And I believe that this book was written in order to encourage them and let them know one particular thing. And we talked about it last week, but it bears repeating and will be repeated again, because we're going to see it from the first word of this book to the last word of this book. God, the God of heaven, is in control. Okay? The God of heaven is in control. The details, yes, the details are important. Okay? The history that is being pointed to is important, not taken away from that. But the fact that it is the God of Daniel, the God of heaven, that has all of that in his control would be certainly a comfort to those in that day who needed it, and certainly for us today. No matter what goes on in this world, we don't ever have to think that somehow all this chaos, in all the chaos that's in the world, that somehow God has let it go and he's not in control anymore, okay? So no matter what happens, we will have, if we seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, we will have food, we will have clothing, we will have shelter, okay? And who knows what's going to happen in the world and what quality that will be, but it doesn't matter. We will have what we need. God is in control, okay? All right, so that's the main point that we want to keep in mind as we go through here, okay? So in spite of present appearances, God is there. So in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, now there's a question here that you start right out with. Daniel and his friends were trained for 3 years. Here we have in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar, of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, his spirit was troubled, his sleep left him, okay? So it says that he had dreams, and plural. But did he have one dream, or did he have multiple dreams, or is there a different explanation for that? So here I have on the screen, not a statement of plurality, but of intensity, a dream with many parts, or a dream of dreams, okay? In verse 3, he says, I had a dream, okay? And so this was a dream that had parts in it, as we're going to see. There was a lot going on here in this dream. So there's a little statement up here. Dreams were regarded in the ancient world as having significance and as portents of events to come. Now, the reason I think this is important is that as we're going to see, the advisors of Babylon or of Nebuchadnezzar, they were not prophets. They were not seers. They did not receive revelation. Okay, these guys were of a different type. Okay, so they practiced divination. Okay, so that's different than a prophet or a seer as we understand it of God. And so the gods would pass on information to humans as the diviners would interpret sheep livers, and abnormal births. So if you had some animal had a two-headed offspring or something, they would read into that. They would look at the stars and dreams. And so it seems reasonable that God uses a dream to reveal the message to Nebuchadnezzar, because that's where Daniel, as a prophet, is going to, going to be a point of similarity there. It's the closest thing. He's not a diviner in the sense that these guys were. So through this dream, so his spirit was troubled and his sleep left him. Then the king commanded that the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. Okay, so we have these different, I don't know, what would you call them? Offices, positions, types of advisors to the king, one of which was the Chaldeans. Okay, so again, none of them were seers or prophets. They were diviners and dealt with things in the way that we just described. Now, Daniel was trained in all this. He knew all about these things and what these diviners did and all that kind of things. And they actually had, books that would help them, apparently, that would help them interpret dreams. But God revealed the dream of Nebuchadnezzar and the interpretation to him. Now, the Chaldeans, what do you know about Chaldeans? Who were they? Okay. They were the ones that under Nebuchadnezzar's dad's name always throws me a little bit. Nabopolassar, okay, or Nabopolassar, perhaps, no, one of those, something like that. They were the people that with him conquered Babylon. They're the ones that were there at this point in time. That was Nebuchadnezzar's father. And these people who were the conquerors also got control of the astrologer class and the power that they held. So they kind of took that over. And the Chaldeans, the way that they're used in this context, would have been used in both of these senses. They were the conquerors and also taken over this astrologer class. And that would have happened decades before Daniel ever showed up. So that was something that was already in place when he got there. I have a quote here. It says, quote, "The Persians considered this Chaldean societal class to be masters of reading and writing, and especially versed in all forms of incantation, sorcery, witchcraft, and the magical arts. They spoke of astrologists and astronomers as Chaldeans, and it is used with this specific meaning in the book of Daniel." Okay, so that's who when he talks about the Chaldeans. So he calls all these guys in. He's had this dream. He's troubled by it. Okay, And the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show you the interpretation. Now, based on that, have you ever come to the conclusion that Nebuchadnezzar had forgotten the dream and he needed them to tell him the dream so he could remember? Why doesn't that make any sense? When you look at this narrative here, the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. Well, if he forgot the dream, then how would he know if their description of the dream was true? Okay, and that's actually in the New American Standard Bible in mine. It's just got that heading, you know how they have them over the chapters, Nebuchadnezzar's forgotten dream.
He just wanted him to tell it to him.
Yeah, because if they can tell him what the dream was, yeah, they could be pretty much trusted to interpret it, right? And so, you know, he's putting them to the test here a little bit. So the king answered and said, the word for me is firm, etc. Verse 6, but if you show the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and its interpretation. You know, you're the guys, right? Someone said in the quote, it's very likely that if the Chaldeans had not been so proud in claiming to have access to the deepest and most completely hidden things, the king would not have made this unreasonable request of them. And they sure looked at it as unreasonable, okay? And look, as we're going through this, see, in my mind, I'm thinking this is all interesting, okay? But it's making a point, okay? The point it's going to make is there is a God in heaven who interprets dreams. Okay? There's a God in heaven who he knows the future, okay? He's in control, okay? And so this is a way of demonstrating that. So show me and you'll get gifts. They answered a second time and said, let the king tell his servants the dream. Okay, they're like, just tell us what the dream was, and we'll show you its interpretation. So if he tells them the dream, right, then they can knock out an interpretation right there on the spot, right? So he's not going for it because he really wants to know, what was that really about? The king answered and said, I know with certainty that you are trying to gain time because you see that the word for me is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there is but one sentence for you. You have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the times change. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me its interpretation. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth. Here's the point, right? There is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand, for no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. Never been done. This is absolutely unheard of. And there's nobody, and this is the reason it's unheard of, because nobody can do it, right? Nobody could possibly, no person on earth could possibly do that. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. But they're going to find out that there is a God who is with flesh, who is in the world, who is involved in his people's lives. Okay? And really, the contest here, if we want to look at that way, as Daniel is going to come into the picture, the contest is not so much between Daniel and these, Chaldeans and enchanters and astrologers or whatnot, but it's between God and the idols that these Chaldeans and enchanters, etc., worship, right? So further making the point of this chapter and of this book. Because of this, the king was angry, verse 12, and very furious, and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. Okay, just kill them all. Wow. Yeah. I mean, these guys didn't play around. And when the Chaldeans king made a decree, that's it, right? And so he commands that. So just kill all of them. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. One of the things that you got to keep in mind for a while is that Daniel and these three friends that have been kind of singled out and talked about here and chronicled, you remember we're going to see that they are really, they're already proven themselves to be 10 times better than anybody else in the king's court when it came to advising him and giving him wisdom, etc. And don't think that that is not being noticed by others. And you see throughout this, especially in these first chapters, kind of a hostility toward them and a real willingness to do what they can do to get them destroyed. Okay, so there's certainly some jealousy going on here. So he sends out the decree, and then and then verse 14, Daniel replied with prudence and discretion to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. Okay, so prudence generally means deep introspection before acting. So before he acted, he thought about it, and with discretion, using this faculty of discrimination, thinking of how to approach the situation, he declared to Arioch, the king's captain, "Why is the decree of the king so urgent?" Then Arioch made the matter known to Daniel, and Daniel went in and requested the king to appoint him a time that he might show the interpretation to the king. So you just set up an appointment when I can come in and tell the king his dream and interpret it. But he hadn't yet received it. So what does that say about him? Yeah, he had total trust. How had God dealt with them thus far, right? So God has been merciful to them, and he's dealt with them wonderfully so far. He got mercy when they wouldn't eat the king's food and drink the wine. And so he has all confidence that God will still be with him. Chris?
Well, you wonder, since he mentioned it earlier, you wonder if Daniel didn't already know, if he didn't have at least an inclination that he could discern this, right? And so that plus his confidence kind of brought him to that. Not that he would have had the confidence anyway.
Yeah.
But they do mention it earlier in the passage.
Yeah.
And it wasn't all of them, right? All of them had this, and then, by the way, Daniel had this.
Yeah. Understanding in all visions and dreams. So, And, and I wonder how, I don't know that we're told, but I wonder how that was manifested, was he already interpreting dreams? He was given ability, okay? So that's interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, Lisa?
But it makes me think about, like, a lot of times we don't know what God's will is. So it comes across almost like lack of confidence, because like if someone's sick, God can heal them, but I don't know if he's going to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how come Daniel knows that he will be able, like what if God in his wisdom didn't want him to do the dream? I don't get where the confidence comes from that I know God will give me this.
I think God let him know. I think that's why the statement's there earlier. I think God let him know that he had that capability, and that he had that capacity. That's because I think you're right. I think it's Lord's will be done, right? God's will be done. But he had already done that with the food. He didn't know he'd be stronger with the food. And so God had demonstrated, at least on one occasion, probably more, that he was with him.
Do you think people ever get in front of God, like, they have such trust that God's going to do something, that God says, well, I'm going to make that true, because you trust me so much. But
Well,
it wasn't God's intention to start with, right? To make that true, but the trust,
yeah, let it be done to you according to your faith,
yeah.
So does that still operate? If I believe, if I ask, believing, it would, let him ask in faith without any doubting.
Doesn't that take you back to, like, I just keep thinking about people's illnesses, and we can't will them better. We don't know
Right.
God's will. We can't decide if we trust enough, and if we love God enough,
Right.
and I'm going to will that to be God's will.
Yeah.
Right? We can't do that. It doesn't work.
No, if we ask anything according to his will, right? Yeah, I mean, I get that. I don't know that it's a real, and I'm just going here, I'm making, if it's really cut and dried, I don't know. I mean, I understand what you're saying completely, because we can't just say, well, I have confidence, therefore I know it's going to happen.
It seems different than walking into the fiery furnace, right? That attitude was, if God saves me, he saves me. If he doesn't, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay, either way.
Yeah,
This is, I know
yeah,
that God's going to deliver, right? It just seems like an extra level of
yeah,
confidence. I don't know where you get that from.
yeah. So what we do know from what James said on the negative side is, if you request of God and you doubt, then you're not going to get anything from him. See? So we know that for sure. So we may not know what his will is on the positive side, but we do know if we doubt when we ask, we cannot expect any answer from him.
But isn't that doubting that God can? I mean, aren't we allowed to doubt that whether he will or not? I guess we can't.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But see, I don't want to pray for something, even if someone's sick. So what's the track record with people that are dying and us praying for them and they miraculously recover? It ain't that good. Okay, right? It's not that good. So, but at the same time, I don't want to, if I'm going to pray for them and have the attitude, I'm not going to bother praying. If I'm going to pray, I'm going to pray in faith, and then whatever happens, I know that God knows best, and it's in his hands, and he'll do with that prayer what he's going to do. But if we're going to pray for something, go all the way. Because if you don't go all the way, you're already guaranteed it's not going anywhere. So this is a good discussion to have, because we face this a lot, yeah.
Prayer does include humility that says I'm totally dependent on the wisdom of God.
Yeah,
So if I'm praying with total humility, at the same time I have total confidence in God,
yeah,
that means I can pray for big things and be okay with whatever he does.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then I haven't lacked any doubt there. There's been no doubt, even though he can do whatever he wants to do, because I'm trusting ability to do what's good.
Yeah.
I may not know what it is.
Yeah. See, when the war in Ukraine started, I prayed that God would crush Putin and bring all that thing to a whole end. But see, I don't know all the stuff that God knows about that. You know, I don't know.
But we know he could have done that.
He could have done that. Yeah. And so for whatever his reasons are, you know, it's going as it's going, and you accept that, you know. Chris, did I see your hand again? Yeah.
Part of the challenge is we're operating under two dispensations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in this dispensation that Daniel finds himself in, there's different modes of communication that God is using with his people.
Mm-hmm.
And under this dispensation, his revelation has been made complete, and we have everything that we need to go with. So we've got a different construct that we're using to in terms of our faith and decisions. Not that they didn't have faith; they had faith in them, but the communication patterns and the way that he engaged with them was different than it is today.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So very good. Good stuff. Okay. So let's see what Daniel does now. And in verse 17, then Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, and told them to seek mercy from God, from the God of heaven, concerning this mystery, so that, now, I'm going back to my original point here. Okay, all right. Told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions might not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Okay? So I'm still saying that he made the appointment before he knew it. But look, you know, the thing is that, don't you get don't you get a certain feeling when, I don't know if I'm doing this right, but when you read something, even, and thinking about here in Daniel, do you sense an intimacy between God and Daniel and his friends? You know, just based on what we've read so far, there's an intimacy there. There's a complete involvement of God with them. And even though our questions are valid questions, it just seems to me, and this is intuitive, okay, that when I read this, I just, in my intuition, I sense a closeness and an intimacy between them that does not surprise me that he would have that kind of confidence in this situation, okay, in this situation with these people in this place at this time under these circumstances, that he would have that confidence and then go and pray with his friends. And then that night, God reveals it to him. Okay? It doesn't surprise me, nor does it necessarily give me, in my mind, license to say that whatever I ask, if I ask it in confidence, God is going to grant it. You know, when Jesus said, whatever you ask, believe that you have already received it, and it will be granted you. Okay, now, does that happen in every case? I don't know. But I've told you, and I'm not going to go through it again, but the story of me coming here, I didn't know what I was going to do. And one of the things that got me through that was, first of all, Jesus kept telling me not to worry in Matthew 6. And I just would sit down and I would say, what would it feel like if what I want was reality? And what I wanted was exactly what I'm doing right now. You know, I applied to be a bus driver and this and that and the other thing. Nothing, nobody even sent me a peep back. Probably said, man, you are way too old for me, you know, you know, you know. But I believed, I felt like it was reality. Now, if somebody tells me, oh, that had nothing to do with it, I don't believe that. That's what the Lord said. But now, can I say that about every single thing His will is going to be in line with my will? No. But I know in that case it did, and I know in a lot of other cases in my life, and I'm sure there's lots of Christians who could say the same thing. Okay? You know, so anyway, yeah, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, this is a great point out here, because it doesn't negate the process that you use. Daniel's laid out a really good process for the way you appeal to God.
Yeah.
But it's not a recipe.
Yeah.
It's not something that if I do this every time, I'm gonna get a cake. As long as I put a quarter cup of mercy in and 3 guys praying, then this is the cake I get, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Right? But it doesn't negate the principle of an appeal to God for mercy and for His guidance in dire situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
If it's a recipe, then it's not faith. Because you
Yeah.
do this, and this, and then you get what you ask for.
Yeah.
That's not faith.
That, right, yeah.
It works.
Yeah, and so I think these kinds of discussions are valuable because we all pray, and we all have important things that we pray for, and people that we pray for, and whatever it may be. And so, you know, it's good for us to know that we can have confidence in God, but at the same time, as Tony mentioned, the humility to accept whatever the answer is. You know, and sometimes we talk about it in terms of yes, no, and wait. You know, so Jesus says, keep on asking, keep on seeking, keep on knocking. Okay, just keep praying. So do you think that we like go so far and then decide, well, there's no sense in praying anymore because I've been praying for this and it hasn't happened, therefore. I wonder if God ever puts us to the test in that, you know. How bad do you want it? You know, how important is it to you? You know, maybe, you know, you know. Okay. So the mystery was revealed to Daniel in the vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Now, remember from Sunday, we talked about blessed and that it has the element of praise, but also of confidence, you know, blessing God. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. Now, this is going to be leading up to a statement Daniel's going to make about the God in heaven who was able to do this. And so he's starting right now to give all the credit to God. Okay? Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons, and the New American Standard says times and epochs. Okay? It's reminiscent of Acts 1, where Jesus mentions it's not for you to know the times or the epochs that the Father has set by His own authority. So the times are just the times, it's just passage of time and things that happen. An epoch is a period of time in which something specific happens or some development in history occurs. Okay, and so there's just a subtle difference there. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. Okay? To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's matter. Okay? So his friends he considered just as much a part of receiving this answer as himself through that praying. Okay? So therefore, Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him. Okay, so here's a young man with great confidence. And you know, confidence kind of begets my brain wants to say confidence, but that won't work, will it? Calmness, you know, a tranquility, you know, when you're confident. And he has every reason to be, because God has revealed, he knows, the answer, and he goes to him. Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation, right? But he knows, as he's already expressed, it is God who is able to do this. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste and said to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king declared to Daniel. Now, by the way, since it's already been said that Daniel and his 3 friends were 10 times better in the advice and the guidance they gave the king than anybody else. So I wonder why he didn't call them in the first place. Kind of wonder about that. A conjecture is that they had, which doesn't really make sense to me. And you know, sometimes I tell you things that other people have said, and that doesn't mean it makes sense to me, but I'll just tell you anyway. But anyway, a conjecture is that they had, it was in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar. Let's explain that real quickly, first of all. For the Babylonians, the first year of a king, they considered the ascension year. So that wasn't counted as a year. That was in their minds the ascension year, first year in ours, right? The second year would be his first year, and the third year would be his second year. So in the second year, now Daniel and his friends were trained 3 years. So a conjecture is that, well, they had just graduated and perhaps he didn't think they had the experience to give him what this dream was and the interpretation. But that's kind of hard to buy because they've already proven their superiority. So but that could be, I don't know. But see, a lot of things are just conjectures because we weren't there and God didn't tell us, right? But be that as it may, in verse 25, then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king. Case said to him, I have found, okay. 26, the king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered the king and said, no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers. And I read that and I wonder if Chaldeans fits there, right? Can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Okay. Now, I had a question on our list about the latter days or days to come. And I asked the question that from this point on, what does that usually point to or refer to, the latter days? Okay. So when you read the prophets, especially, and even interpretations of them in Acts 3, where he talks about these days, but it usually it's pointing to the Messiah, the kingdom of the Messiah that's coming, right? And so here, if we take the Roman view of the statue, there's another view called the Greek view, which I don't necessarily believe, but there's a couple views of that here. Then he's pointing to the days of the kings of that fourth empire, the Roman, when God set up the kingdom was set up, okay? There, and we'll talk about that more when we get to it here. But he's talking about what was going to happen here in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay on your bed are these. Okay. Now, again, remember that the underlying main point is the power of the God of heaven. Okay, that's the main thing. Okay, to you, O King, as you lay in bed. Okay, so I'll go over here. Okay, wait, let me see here. Yeah, okay, so we're going to get to that here. He says, okay, let me say, I'm going to. To you, O King, as you lay in bed, thoughts of what would be after this, and he who reveals mysteries made known to you what is to be. But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because of any wisdom that I have more than all the living, but in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your mind. So, how has Nebuchadnezzar's success been up to this point as a conqueror and as a king, and how successful has he been? Yeah, he's been so successful that pretty soon he's going to be walking on his veranda and just thinking about the grandeur of his kingdom and all that he has accomplished. So he's had great success. And it isn't surprising that he would want to know what this dream was about, because it's pointing to the future. And you just wonder if, everything has been so good and I've been so successful, what's going to happen going forward? Be that as it may. So, but he says, okay. But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because of the wisdom. This is verse 30. Okay. And, verse 31. You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. Now, keep in mind that, Nebuchadnezzar was troubled in his, when he saw this dream, and he was, it really made an impression on him. And this was a dream that was given by, by the Holy Spirit to make clear some things. And I just wonder if you had a dream directly from the Holy Spirit, how vivid it would be, and how impressive that would be. And certainly it had him really troubled. So he saw this great image. The image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. Okay? So it was mighty and of exceeding brightness. Okay? So you have to use your imagination a little bit. Okay? And, think about what he's seeing. Stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold all together were broken in pieces and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them could be found. Okay? So this stone comes out and hits that statue, and it's in a weak place. You know, that's where I think we get that phrase, clay feet, right? Feet of clay. And the whole thing crumbled into dust, and the wind blew it away. Wow. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Right? So, prophetic language again. It will come about in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house will be established as the chief of the mountains and will be raised above the hills. Right? And so that mountain, that idea of a mountain, in fact, in Jeremiah 51, I think it is, where he talks about this very Babylon, that it would become a burnt out mountain. So a mountain in prophetic language refers to a kingdom, a government, a seat of power, okay? And so this stone that was cut out by no human hands became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So there is a seat of government, of power, that would replace those earthly kingdoms. See? So what does it say about earthly kingdoms that depend on the wisdom and power of man? How have they done over time? They've risen and they have fallen, right? See? And so if I'm in exile and I need comfort and I need confidence that God hasn't abandoned me, and I can realize that, as we're going to see here in the message of this book, that God's throne is forever. Okay? There is no power that can bring it to an end, because he's going to say here, let me get my place back here. I look away and then I lose it. Okay, right here. Okay, so this great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. You, king, the King of Kings, to whom the God of heaven has given. Now, this is a lesson that God is going to teach to Nebuchadnezzar in a real solid fashion, okay, later on. That God has given the kingdom, the power, and the might, and the glory, and into whose hand he has given, wherever they dwell, the children of man, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, making you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you, and a third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over all the earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks into pieces and shatters all things, and like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these. And as you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom, but some of the firmness of iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with the soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. Now, we're familiar with the Roman view of this, that fourth empire was Rome, okay? There's a Greek interpretation of this that says, oh man, oh, okay. Oh man, I hate that. Well, I can go to the end. I'm trying to remember my train of thought there, but the end of it was that the feet were Greece instead of Rome, and that the iron and clay represented them trying to, and we're going to get into some of this history, but them, marrying the Seleucids and the Ptolemies and making these alliances, and that they didn't hold up, and so they use that as they look at it in that way, but it still really seems more plausible that it is talking about that Roman view. Yeah.
Yeah, if in premillennial thinking, you take a Greek view of the world. You have to, because otherwise the kingdoms come,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the problem with the Greek view is just that history doesn't support it. It's
Yeah.
laid out right there, right?
Yeah.
And that's the challenge with it. But you absolutely have to take a Greek view of that in order to hold any type of a premillennial view
Yeah.
of the world.
Yeah. Isn't that something? How these things catch on so strong like that? Verse 44, and in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It will break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. All right. Now, there's a passage in Isaiah 9, I think it's verse 6, that says, to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will rest on his shoulders. So let me ask you this. Would it be accurate to say, to us a child is born, a son is given, and the church will rest on his shoulders? Okay. So what is the government? Are you the government? Are you, see, so he's going to set up a kingdom. He's going to set up a government. He is king. And who are the governed? We are, okay? And so there's always been this tension between the kingdom and the church, and are they the same thing? But I don't think they're the same thing, that he set up a government. That's the kingdom, the rule, the authority that we submit to or don't submit to, okay? But they are not interchangeable. Although, if you are in the kingdom, if you are a subject of the kingdom, you are within the assembly or the congregation of God, okay? And we'll leave King James with his church word there, okay? Right? And you are a part of that group of people that are governed under this government or kingdom that God set up. It seems pretty simple to me. Okay? So he's going to set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. Isn't that important? Okay? And just as you saw, verse 45, that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, a great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure. That's what's going to happen. Okay? So next week, the king will respond. We'll talk about the king's response. I encourage you to read, this chapter and chapter 3, and just kind of do some reading ahead as we go along. Okay? Are there any comments or questions on what we've talked about tonight? Okay, good class. I really appreciate the comments and the discussion. And with that, class dismissed. All right.